The Galactic Council chambers hummed with the low vibration of 1,000 different species breathing, chittering, and communicating in ways that defied human comprehension. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the central podium, her small human frame dwarfed by the towering representatives of civilizations that had mastered space travel when her species was still discovering fire. The Vorthak delegate, a crystalline being that refracted light into prismatic patterns, spoke through harmonic resonances that the translation matrix barely managed to convert into words. The human petition is quaint. They wish to establish mining rights in the Kepler expanse, a region we have deemed too dangerous for lesser species. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Zephyrian representative, whose tentacled form writhed with what humans had learned to recognize as amusement, added their voice to the discussion. The Kepler expanse is home to the Zarathi hives. These are not the peaceful traders your species has encountered at the Outer Rim stations. The Zarathi are apex predators, evolved killers who view all other life as either food or threat. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. Earth needed those rare minerals. The planet's population had reached critical mass, and without the quantum crystals found only in the Kepler region, their terraforming projects would collapse. Millions would die in the resulting resource wars. Honorable delegates, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Humanity understands the risks. We've studied the Zarathi behavioral patterns extensively. Our military advisors believe we can establish defensive mining operations without triggering a full-scale conflict. The laughter that followed was unlike anything heard on Earth. The Kethmoran ambassador produced a sound like grinding metal, while the aquatic delphinians created haunting whale-song mockery that made Sarah's bones ache. Even the normally stoic Centaurian collective seemed to vibrate with mirth. High Counselor Vextar, whose species had ruled the galactic government for 3 millennia, finally spoke. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority, each word carefully measured and delivered with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong about galactic affairs. Young humans, Vextar intoned, his 4 eyes focusing on Sarah with what she interpreted as pity. You have been among the stars for barely 50 of your years. The Zarathi have been apex predators for 50 million. Your entire species could be consumed by a single hive cluster before your primitive weapons could even scratch their bioarmor. The chamber fell silent except for the ambient hum of life support systems. Sarah felt the weight of 1,000 alien gazes upon her, measuring her species and finding them wanting. She had prepared for this moment, knowing that humanity's reputation as newcomers and primitives would work against them. With respect, High Counselor, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the crushing pressure of alien disapproval. Humanity didn't survive ice ages, plague, and global wars by backing down from dangerous situations. We've faced extinction before and emerged stronger. Extinction from natural disasters and your own kind. The Vorthak delegate chimed in, their crystalline form shifting to a deep red that the translation matrix indicated was contempt. The Zarathi are beyond your comprehension. They are living weapons, bred by an unknown force to be perfect killing machines. Their exoskeletons can withstand direct energy weapon fire. Their reflexes operate at speeds that make light seem slow. Their reproduction rate ensures that killing 1 results in 10 taking its place. Sarah pulled up her holographic display, showing detailed schematics of human military hardware. Our analysis suggests that coordinated kinetic bombardment, combined with quantum disruption fields, could create sufficient defensive perimeters for mining operations. We're not asking to fight them directly, merely to establish a presence they'll find too costly to assault. The silence that followed was even more profound than before. Then slowly, the laughter began again. This time it was universal, a cosmic joke that only the enlightened species could understand. Even the machine intelligence delegates seemed to emit sounds that registered as mirth. High Counselor Vextar raised one massive hand, and the chamber fell silent. The Council has reviewed humanity's request and finds it ambitious beyond reason. The Zarathi have destroyed civilizations 1,000 times more advanced than yours. The Mordith Empire lasted 16,000 years before the Zarathi reduced their 17 worlds to ash. The crystalline hegemony had mastered matter manipulation and dimensional folding, yet they fell in a single solar cycle when they encroached upon Zarathi space. Sarah's heart sank, but she pressed on. Then grant us restricted access. A single mining station, heavily defended, in the outermost edge of the expanse. If we succeed, expand our operations. If we fail, she let the implication hang in the air. If you fail, Vextar continued, you will awaken a sleeping giant that has slumbered for 3 centuries. The Zarathi have been contained to their home systems through careful diplomacy and strategic avoidance. Your primitive mining operations will be seen as an invasion. They will respond as they always do, with complete and total annihilation of the threat. The Centaurian collective spoke in perfect unison, their telepathic link creating an eerie harmonic effect. The last time the Zarathi were fully roused, 17 star systems were stripped of all life. Planets were cracked open like eggs. Even their own breeding worlds were sacrificed to fuel their war machine. It took the combined fleets of 47 civilizations to drive them back to their core systems. Sarah felt the crushing weight of galactic history pressing down on her shoulders. Every species in this chamber had survived encounters with forces that could casually erase human civilization. They had learned caution through eons of warfare and diplomacy. They had earned their right to speak from positions of wisdom and experience. But Earth was dying. The climate restoration projects needed those crystals. The orbital habitats required the rare metals found only in Zarathi space. Humanity had no choice but to take the risk that older, wiser species had learned to avoid. I understand the Council's concerns, Sarah said finally, her voice carrying a resignation that seemed to satisfy the assembled delegates. But I must formally request that you reconsider. Humanity needs these resources. We're willing to accept full responsibility for any consequences. The voting process took 17 hours. Conducted in alien languages and through sensory methods, human technology couldn't properly translate. When it was over, High Counselor Vexitar delivered the verdict with the solemnity of a funeral rite. By a vote of 847 to 1, with 2 abstentions, the Galactic Council formally denies humanity's petition for mining rights in the Kepler expanse. Furthermore, we issue an official warning that any human vessels found in Zarathi space will be considered in violation of galactic law and subject to immediate interdiction. The single vote in favor had come from the Altarian delegate, a species known for their gambling addiction and poor decision-making. The abstentions were from civilizations so ancient they rarely bothered to vote on anything. Sarah bowed formally to the council, her mind already working on alternative solutions. As she prepared to leave the chamber, Vextar's voice followed her. Young Ambassador Chen, he called, his tone almost gentle. Your species shows promise. Do not throw away that potential in a futile gesture against forces beyond your understanding. There are other ways to obtain the resources you need. The Council stands ready to assist humanity in finding safer alternatives. Sarah paused at the chamber's exit, looking back at the assembled might of galactic civilization. These beings had survived eons of warfare, cosmic catastrophes, and encounters with forces that could reshape reality itself. Their caution was born from hard-won wisdom. Thank you for your concern, High Counselor, she replied. Humanity will consider all options carefully. But as Sarah walked through the corridors of the Council Station, past viewing ports that showed the vast tapestry of galactic civilization, She was already composing her report to Earth. The message would be simple. Peaceful options had been exhausted. The military option was now the only path forward. 3 months later, the UES Prometheus, humanity's first deep space military vessel, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler expanse. Captain Marcus Webb studied the sensor readings with the calm professionalism of a man who had accepted that he might be leading his crew to their deaths. Initial scans confirmed the presence of at least 40 Zarathi hive ships in the inner system, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, the ship's tactical officer. Biosignatures indicate a population in excess of 50 million individuals across 17 different hive clusters. Captain Webb nodded grimly. The numbers matched intelligence estimates, which meant humanity was facing odds that made the Council's warnings seem optimistic rather than alarmist. And the mineral surveys? Confirmed, sir, replied Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's chief scientist. Quantum crystal deposits exceed our most optimistic projections. The rare metal concentrations are 3 times higher than theoretical maximums. If we could establish even a single mining operation here, it would solve Earth's resource crisis for the next 2 centuries. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Every person aboard knew the stakes. Earth's population had reached crisis levels. The terraforming projects were failing without quantum crystals. The orbital habitats were deteriorating without rare metal components. This mission wasn't just about expansion or exploration. It was about survival. "Sir," called out Ensign Rodriguez from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from one of the Zarathi hive ships." Captain Webb straightened in his command chair. First contact with the Zarathi had been theoretical until this moment. On screen, the image that appeared defied human comprehension. The creature addressing them was clearly evolved from arthropod stock, but scaled up to nightmarish proportions. Its exoskeleton gleamed with an oily black sheen that seemed to absorb light. Multiple eyes, each the size of a human head, tracked independently as they focused on the camera. When it spoke, the sound was like grinding metal mixed with the screams of dying animals. "Soft flesh," the Zarathi said, its voice translated by the ship's AI into flat, emotionless English. "You have entered the feeding grounds. This is a violation that demands correction. Withdraw now, or become sustenance for the hives." Captain Webb stood, straightening his uniform. The moment had come to test humanity's resolve against one of the galaxy's most feared predators. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We claim salvage rights to this system under Article 15 of the Galactic Salvage Convention." The Zarathi's multiple eyes focused with laser intensity on the camera. "Your species is unknown to the hives. Your claim has no meaning. You will withdraw, or you will feed the young." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Webb replied with the calm professionalism that had carried him through 3 military conflicts. "Earth recognizes no authority over unclaimed systems. We intend to establish mining operations in this region." The sound that emerged from the Zarathi was unlike anything in human experience. It was laughter, but laughter that spoke of cosmic jokes too dark for mortal minds to comprehend. "Foolish soft flesh. Your entire species numbers fewer than the young in a single hive cluster. We will consume your ship as an appetizer before visiting your home world for the main feast." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. Captain Webb looked around at his crew, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination in every face. They had just declared war on a species that had destroyed civilizations the Galactic Council considered untouchable. "All hands, this is the captain," Webb announced over the ship's intercom. "As of this moment, we are in a state of active hostility with the Zarathi. Every person aboard this ship volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. Our families, our friends, Our entire species depends on our success here. We will not fail them. The Zarathi response came within the hour. 3 hive ships, each the size of a city, detached from the inner system and began accelerating toward the Prometheus. Sensor readings indicated they carried enough firepower to reduce Earth's entire space fleet to plasma. "Estimated time to intercept?" Webb asked. 47 minutes, sir," replied Lieutenant Commander Park. "They're not using any stealth technology. They want us to see them coming." Webb nodded. The Zarathi were supreme predators, evolved to hunt and kill without subtlety or deception. They wanted their prey to know death was approaching. Terror was part of their arsenal. "Launch the drones," Webb ordered. "Full spread, maximum dispersal. I want them to think we're running scared." The Prometheus released a cloud of small, fast-moving objects that began racing away from the ship at maximum acceleration. To Zarathi sensors, they would appear to be escape pods or perhaps a desperate attempt to call for reinforcements. The hive ships adjusted course to intercept the fleeing objects, their predatory instincts driving them to pursue anything that ran. It was exactly what Captain Webb had hoped for. "Detonate," he ordered. The space around the 3 Zarathi hive ships erupted in a series of nuclear fireballs. Each drone carried a fusion warhead designed to maximize electromagnetic pulse rather than pure destructive force. The Zarathi ships emerged from the inferno damaged but intact, their bio-armor having absorbed energies that would have vaporized conventional vessels. But they were blind. Their sensor arrays had been fried by the electromagnetic pulse. Their communications were down. For the first time in their species' history, Zarathi hunters were operating without the technological advantages that had made them apex predators. "Target the lead ship," Webb commanded. "Kinetic bombardment, full spread." The Prometheus opened fire with weapons that the Galactic Council had dismissed as primitive. Depleted uranium slugs, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, struck the lead Zarathi hive ship like the fist of an angry god. The bio-armor that had laughed off energy weapons proved vulnerable to simple kinetic force applied with human engineering precision. The lead ship broke apart, its internal structures unable to withstand the devastating impact of matter moving at relativistic speeds. Millions of Zarathi warriors died in the first exchange of fire, their perfect killing machine reduced to debris by weapons their scientists had considered laughably primitive. The remaining 2 ships began to retreat, their predatory confidence shattered by an encounter with prey that refused to behave according to galactic norms. But Captain Webb wasn't finished with them. "Pursue and destroy," he ordered. "We need to send a message that will reach every hive in this system. Humanity is not prey." The battle that followed would be studied by military academicians for generations to come. Humanity had taken everything the galaxy's greatest predators could dish out and responded with tactics that turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses. The Zarathi were hunters evolved for close combat and overwhelming numbers. Humans fought from distance with weapons that made their bio-armor irrelevant. When the last Zarathi hive ship fell silent, drifting powerless in the void, Captain Webb opened a channel to the inner system. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earth ship Prometheus, addressing all Zarathi forces in this system. We have claimed mining rights to the outer planets. Any interference with our operations will result in the complete destruction of your hive clusters. You have 1 standard hour to acknowledge our terms." The response came from dozens of hive ships simultaneously, their combined voices creating a harmonic roar that threatened to overload the ship's communication systems. "Impossible," they said in perfect unison. "Soft flesh cannot defeat the hives. This is deception. This is trickery." "The wreckage of your 3 hive ships suggests otherwise," Webb replied calmly. "You have 58 minutes to acknowledge our terms." What followed was the first recorded instance of Zarathi retreat without combat. The inner system's hive ships began moving away from the outer planets, their predatory certainty replaced by something their species had never experienced: fear of another species. As the Prometheus began establishing humanity's first foothold in Zarathi space, Captain Webb composed his report to Earth Command. The message was brief, but carried implications that would reshape galactic politics forever. Mission successful. Zarathi resistance neutralized. Beginning mining operations immediately. Recommend immediate deployment of additional forces to secure our territorial claims. The galaxy's greatest predators have just learned that humans are not prey. The report would take 3 months to reach Earth. By the time it arrived, the Galactic Council would already be receiving disturbing reports from the Kepler expanse. Something unprecedented was happening in Zarathi space. The apex predators were fleeing from their own hunting grounds, and the cause was a single ship from the species the Council had dismissed as too primitive to survive first contact. Humanity had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage, and the announcement came written in the wreckage of ships that had been considered unstoppable. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in unprecedented secrecy. For the first time in 3 millennia, the council chambers were sealed to all but the most senior delegates, their discussions protected by quantum encryption that would make any recording impossible. The subject matter was too sensitive, too potentially destabilizing to risk public knowledge. High Counselor Vexatar reviewed the reports with growing disbelief. 3 Zarathi hive ships destroyed, 7 major hive clusters evacuated from their traditional feeding grounds, an entire star system's worth of apex predators fleeing from a single human vessel. The implications defied everything the galactic community understood about power dynamics and natural order. "The reports must be in error," declared the Vorthak delegate, their crystalline forms cycling through colors that indicated extreme agitation. "The humans possess no technology capable of defeating Zarathi bioships. Their weapons are kinetic projectiles and crude fusion devices. The Zarathi have withstood bombardment from singularity cannons." Admiral Kethvar of the Centaurian Collective projected a series of tactical displays into the chamber's central viewing area. The telepathically linked minds of his species had analyzed every available piece of data about the human incursion, and their conclusions were disturbing. "The human tactics are unlike anything in our military databases," Admiral Kethvar reported through the collective consciousness that spoke as one voice. They utilized electromagnetic pulse weapons to blind Zarathi sensor arrays, then employed kinetic bombardment at relativistic velocities. The Zarathi bioarmor was specifically evolved to absorb and redirect energy-based attacks. It has no defense against simple mass traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, each species expressing disbelief in their own unique way. The concept that humanity had discovered a fundamental weakness in Zarathi defenses was almost more shocking than the fact that they had been willing to attack at all. "Impossible," chittered the insectoid Manthari delegate. "Our greatest military minds have studied the Zarathi for 50,000 years. Every possible attack vector has been analyzed and found wanting. How could a species with 50 years of space travel discover something we missed?" High Counselor Vextar raised his massive hand, and the chamber fell silent. His ancient eyes showed the weight of countless eons, and for the first time since assuming the highest office in galactic government, he appeared genuinely uncertain. "Perhaps," Vextar said slowly, his words carrying the gravity of cosmic revelation, "we have been thinking like civilized beings for too long. The humans approach warfare like the primitive hunters they recently were. They see prey where we see untouchable predators." The implication hung in the chamber like a toxic gas. If humanity could defeat the Zarathi, what did that say about the rest of galactic civilization? Had 3 million years of advancement and enlightenment actually made them weaker rather than stronger? Meanwhile, in the Kepler expanse, Captain Webb was learning firsthand why the Galactic Council had tried to warn humanity away from Zarathi space. The mining operation had been established successfully, but maintaining it required constant vigilance against creatures that refused to accept the new reality of human superiority. "Contact, bearing 27 Mark 4, called out Lieutenant Commander Park from the tactical station. "Single Zarathi scout ship, attempting to penetrate our sensor grid." Webb studied the tactical display with the calm professionalism that had become his trademark. 3 months of constant skirmishes with Zarathi forces had taught him that the apex predators were learning to adapt to human tactics. They were testing defenses, probing for weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. "Intercept course," Webb ordered. "Full stealth configuration. I want to know what they're really after." The UES Prometheus had been modified extensively since the first engagement. Human engineers had worked around the clock to upgrade every system, incorporating lessons learned from actual combat with the galaxy's most dangerous predators. The ship now carried weapons and sensors that would have been considered impossible just months earlier. As they approached the Zarathi scout, the ship's AI began analyzing the alien vessel's behavior patterns. What it discovered sent chills down every spine on the bridge. "Sir," reported Dr. Vasquez, "the scout ship isn't trying to gather intelligence on our mining operations. It's mapping our patrol patterns. Cross-referencing with known Zarathi tactical doctrines suggests they're planning a coordinated assault using multiple hive clusters." Webb felt his blood turn cold. The reports from the inner system had indicated increasing Zarathi activity, but intelligence had suggested they were simply regrouping after their initial defeats. The possibility that they were planning a massive counterattack had been considered unlikely given their apparent retreat. "How many ships are we talking about?" Webb asked. "Conservative estimates suggest at least 20 hive clusters, possibly more," Park replied. "Combined fleet strength would be approximately 300 major vessels, each carrying between 10 and 50 million individual Zarathi warriors." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had won every engagement so far, but those had been small-scale encounters with individual hive ships or small task forces. A coordinated assault by hundreds of ships would overwhelm even human tactical superiority through sheer numbers. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth Command," announced Ensign Rodriguez. "Priority Alpha classification." The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Patricia Morrison, the architect of humanity's deep space military doctrine. Her expression was grim as she delivered news that would reshape the entire conflict. "Captain Webb, intelligence indicates that the Galactic Council has imposed a complete embargo on all human space. No alien vessels are permitted to trade with Earth colonies, and no alien technology can be transferred to human forces. They're attempting to contain what they consider a dangerous precedent." Webb's jaw tightened. The galactic community was treating humanity like a virus that needed to be quarantined. Their success against the Zarathi had apparently frightened civilizations that had spent eons learning to coexist with apex predators. "Furthermore," Admiral Morrison continued, "long-range sensors have detected massive Zarathi fleet movements throughout the Kepler expanse. We estimate they're massing for an assault that will either drive humanity out of their territory or demonstrate to the galaxy that their initial defeats were mere flukes." The transmission shifted to show strategic projections of the developing situation. Red indicators showed Zarathi positions throughout the expanse, their numbers growing by the hour as hive fleets converged on human mining operations. "Your orders are simple, Captain," Morrison concluded. "Hold the line at all costs. Earth is dispatching additional forces, but they won't arrive for 6 weeks. Until then, you and the mining operation are on your own against the largest Zarathi fleet assembled in recorded history." As the transmission ended, Webb found himself facing a tactical situation that would have been considered hopeless by any reasonable military standard. A single ship and a hastily constructed mining station against hundreds of Zarathi hive ships carrying billions of warriors evolved specifically for killing. Options? He asked his senior staff. We could withdraw, suggested Lieutenant Commander Park. Live to fight another day when we have better odds. That would abandon the mining operation and all the workers, Dr. Vasquez pointed out. Plus, it would prove to the galaxy that humanity can be intimidated. We'd never get another chance at resources this crucial. Webb studied the tactical displays, his mind working through scenarios that conventional military doctrine would have dismissed as suicide missions. But humanity hadn't gotten this far by following conventional wisdom. We're not withdrawing, he announced finally, but we're also not fighting this conventionally. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to analyze every piece of data we have about Zarathi psychology and behavior patterns. There has to be something we can exploit. Over the next 48 hours, as Zarathi fleets continued to mass in the inner system, human engineers and scientists worked frantically to develop new weapons and tactics. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Dr. Elena Vasquez's analysis of Zarathi social structures. They're not just predators, she explained to the assembled senior staff. They're a hive mind with strict hierarchical structures. Every hive cluster follows a dominant queen, and every queen defers to a supreme matriarch. If we could identify and target the command structure, we cut off the head and the body dies, Webb finished. But how do we identify queen ships in a fleet of hundreds? Quantum resonance analysis, Dr. Vasquez replied, calling up displays that showed complex wave patterns. Queen ships emit distinctive pheromone signatures that coordinate hive activities. Our sensors can detect these patterns if we know what to look for. The plan that emerged was audacious even by human standards. Instead of trying to fight hundreds of Zarathi ships, they would target the handful of queens controlling the massive fleet. Without their queens, the remaining ships would lose coordination and become vulnerable to human tactical superiority. It's never been attempted, Park warned. We'd have to penetrate deep into their formation, identify and destroy command vessels, then fight our way out before they could respond. The alternative is being overwhelmed by sheer numbers, Webb replied. Sometimes the impossible plan is the only plan that has a chance of working. As the Zarathi fleet began its final approach toward human positions, the UES Prometheus launched what would become known as the Kepler Gambit. Using stealth technology pushed beyond safe operational limits, the ship infiltrated the massive alien formation while broadcasting false sensor signatures that made it appear to be debris from earlier battles. The sight of the assembled Zarathi fleet was unlike anything in human experience. Hundreds of bioships, each the size of a city, moved through space with the coordinated precision of a single organism. Their black, chitinous hulls seemed to absorb starlight, creating moving holes in space that spoke of nightmares made manifest. Target acquired, Park announced quietly. Queen ship identified, bearing 09 Mark 7. Quantum signature confirms command status. Webb studied the tactical display, noting the massive vessel at the center of the formation. It was 3 times larger than the standard hive ships, its hull marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythms that seemed to hypnotize human observers. All weapons, target the Queen ship, he ordered. Maximum yield, concentrated fire. We'll only get one shot at this. The Prometheus unleashed everything in its arsenal. Kinetic rounds accelerated to near-light speed, fusion warheads designed to maximize electromagnetic disruption, and experimental quantum torpedoes that existed at the very edge of human technology. The combined assault struck the Zarathi Queen ship with the force of a small star-going supernova. The result exceeded even optimistic projections. The Queen ship didn't just die. It disintegrated in a cascade of secondary explosions that spoke to catastrophic system failures throughout its biomechanical structure. The death cry it broadcast was unlike anything previously recorded from Zarathi sources, a sound of pure agony and confusion that every ship in the fleet received simultaneously. "My God," whispered Dr. Vasquez as she monitored the aftermath. "The entire fleet is losing coordination. They're reverting to individual pack behaviors." What had been a precisely coordinated armada became a chaotic swarm of individual ships, each following primitive hunting instincts without the guiding intelligence of their queen. They began attacking each other as often as they targeted human positions, their carefully planned assault dissolving into internecine warfare. "Target the next queen ship," Webb ordered, pressing the advantage while Zerathi forces were in disarray. "We need to break their command structure completely." The battle that followed would be studied by military academicians throughout the galaxy. Humanity had taken the most feared predators in known space and turned their greatest strength, their hive mind coordination, into a crippling weakness. By targeting command structures rather than fighting ship to ship, human forces achieved victory ratios that defied mathematical probability. Within 6 hours, 7 Zerathi queen ships had been destroyed, and the massive fleet that had threatened to drive humanity from Kepler space was fleeing in complete disorder. Individual hive ships raced away from the battle zone in every direction, their warriors consumed by a terror that their species had never experienced before. Captain Webb opened a channel to the fleeing Zerathi forces, his voice carrying across space to reach ships throughout the expanse. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earth ship Prometheus. Your fleet has been defeated, your queens are dead, and your territory is now under human protection. Any Zerathi vessel found within this star system will be destroyed without warning." The response came from a single surviving ship, its transmission filled with static and interference that spoke to massive system damage. "This is Hive Mistress Zithara. How did Soft Flesh defeat the Great Swarm? This outcome was not predicted in any scenario." "Because you thought like predators," Webb replied. "We thought like soldiers. There's a difference." As news of the Battle of Kepler Expanse reached the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were called at every level of government. The impossible had become reality. Humanity had not only defeated the Zerathi, but had done so decisively against their largest fleet in recorded history. High Counselor Vextar stared at the reports with the expression of someone whose fundamental understanding of the universe had been shattered. The species he had dismissed as too primitive to survive had just accomplished what the combined might of galactic civilization had considered impossible. "Request emergency session with human representatives," he ordered. "It appears we have severely underestimated the threat they represent to galactic stability." But as diplomatic wheels began turning throughout Council space, the Zerathi were already spreading word of humanity's capabilities to every corner of the galaxy. The species that had been apex predators for 50 million years were learning a new emotion, fear, and they were teaching it to every other predatory species they encountered. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans were dismissed and their cautions ignored, the consequences could reshape the fundamental balance of power that had existed for eons. The hunt was far from over, but for the first time in galactic history, the Zerathi were the ones being hunted. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Expanse, the galactic community was struggling to process a reality that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare, predation, and the natural order of species dominance. The humans, once dismissed as primitive newcomers, had become the most feared force in known space. Admiral Patricia Morrison stood in the command center of Kepler Station, humanity's first permanent installation deep in former Zerathi territory. The mining operation that had started as a desperate gamble for resources had evolved into something far more significant. A declaration of human intent to claim their place among the galaxy's apex powers. Through the station's massive viewport, she could see the constant traffic of human ships moving through space that had been controlled by the Zarathi for millions of years. Cargo vessels hauled precious minerals toward Earth, while military escorts ensured that no alien force would threaten the supply lines that were rapidly becoming the foundation of human expansion. "Admiral," called Commander Sarah Park, now promoted to head of station security, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting immediate diplomatic contact." Morrison smiled grimly. The same council that had denied humanity's request for mining rights was now begging for an audience. The irony wasn't lost on her, but she also understood the dangerous game humanity was playing. They had proven they could defeat the galaxy's greatest predators, but that victory had made them targets for every other species that felt threatened by the new balance of power. "Put them through," Morrison ordered. High Counselor Vextar appeared on the main display, his ancient features showing strain that hadn't been there during their first diplomatic encounter. Behind him, Morrison could see representatives of dozens of species, all looking anxious in ways that spoke to the broader implications of humanity's success. "Admiral Morrison," Vexatar began, his voice carefully measured, "the Council wishes to congratulate humanity on its impressive military achievements in Zarathi space." "Thank you, High Counselor," Morrison replied with diplomatic politeness that didn't quite hide her satisfaction. "We appreciate the Council's recognition of our territorial claims." "Yes, about those claims," Vextar continued, and Morrison could hear the carefully controlled tension in his voice. "The Council has received disturbing reports about human activities beyond the original mining operations. Our intelligence suggests you've established military bases in 17 star systems, all of which were previously considered Zarathi territory." Morrison nodded calmly. "Earth's security requirements have expanded as our operations have grown. We've found it necessary to maintain defensive positions to protect our mining fleets from Zarathi raiders." "Raiders?" The Vorthak delegate's crystalline form flashed through several colors indicating extreme agitation. "The Zarathi are fleeing from human forces. Our monitoring stations have recorded massive population movements as entire hive clusters evacuate their traditional territories. They're not raiding, they're running for their lives." The truth was even more dramatic than the alien delegate realized. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Zarathi. They had triggered a complete psychological collapse of a species that had never experienced defeat. Across the expanse, hive clusters were abandoning territories they had held for millennia, fleeing from the mere possibility of human contact. "The situation is more complex than you might realize," Morrison replied carefully. "While it's true that many Zarathi forces have withdrawn from contested areas, others continue to pose threats to human operations. We've been forced to pursue them into previously unexplored regions to ensure the safety of our personnel." What she didn't mention was that pursuing threats had become humanity's primary military doctrine. Human fleets were systematically hunting down Zarathi hive ships throughout the expanse, destroying those that refused to surrender and forcing the others into ever more remote regions of space. The galaxy's former apex predators were being driven to extinction by a species they had initially dismissed as primitive prey. Captain Marcus Webb, now commanding a full fleet rather than a single ship, demonstrated this reality in the Arcturus sector. His task force of 12 vessels had cornered a Zarathi hive cluster that had been trying to establish new breeding grounds in a remote star system. "Hive Mistress Velkira," Webb transmitted to the lead Zarathi ship, "you have entered space now claimed by humanity. You have 1 standard hour to evacuate this system or face destruction." The response came back laden with the harmonics of desperation that human xenobiologists had learned to recognize in Zarathi communications. "Human Captain Webb, the hives have withdrawn from your territories as demanded. This system is beyond your claimed boundaries. Why do you pursue the hives to extinction?" Webb studied the tactical display showing the positions of 7 Zarathi hive ships. Each one represented millions of warriors who had once been considered the ultimate killing machines in galactic space. Now they huddled in a remote system like refugees, seeking only to avoid humanity's relentless advance. "Because you attacked first," Webb replied with the cold logic that had become humanity's trademark. "Because you declared that you would hunt my species to extinction. Because the only way to ensure that threat never manifests is to eliminate it permanently." The Zarathi response was unlike anything previously recorded from their species. Instead of threats or predatory posturing, Hive Mistress Velkira transmitted what human linguists recognized as a formal surrender ceremony. "The hives acknowledge human dominance," she transmitted, the words seeming to cause her physical pain. "We offer complete submission to prevent further destruction of our kind. What must the hives do to purchase survival?" Webb felt no satisfaction in the moment. The Zarathi had been the galaxy's greatest predators, but they were still sentient beings with their own right to existence. However, Earth's survival had required this confrontation, and humanity couldn't afford to show weakness when their position in galactic affairs was still being established. "Relocate beyond the galactic rim," he ordered. "Establish your new territories in regions that pose no threat to human expansion or operations. Accept monitoring by human observers to ensure compliance. These terms are non-negotiable." The conversation was being recorded and transmitted throughout the galaxy, where it was monitored by intelligence services from every major civilization. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just defeating the Zarathi. They were dictating terms to them as conquered subjects. On the Galactic Council Station, this intelligence prompted emergency sessions that continued around the clock. The Council was facing a crisis that challenged the fundamental assumptions upon which galactic civilization had been built for millions of years. "They're not stopping with the Zarathi," reported Admiral Kethvar of the Centaurian Collective. "Human fleets have been detected in the Vega Nebula, the Centauri Triangle, and the outer reaches of the Magellanic Void. They're expanding beyond their original territorial claims at an exponential rate." The truth was that humanity had learned a crucial lesson from their encounters with galactic civilization. Strength was the only currency that mattered. The same species that had dismissed them as primitives when they were weak now treated them with nervous respect because they had proven their ability to destroy the galaxy's most feared predators. "Earth's population is approaching 11 billion, High Counselor Vextar noted grimly. "Their resource requirements are growing exponentially. If they continue expanding at current rates, they'll control a significant portion of this galactic arm within a century." "Unless we stop them," suggested the Manthari delegate, its insectoid features clicking with agitation. "The combined fleets of the Council still outnumber human forces by a significant margin." The silence that followed was deafening. Every delegate understood the implications of what had been suggested. A preemptive war against humanity before they became too powerful to contain. But that same logic had been applied to the Zarathi for millions of years, and everyone had seen how human tactics had turned supposed advantages into liabilities. "War with humanity would be unlike anything we've experienced," Vextar said finally. "They don't follow conventional tactical doctrines. They target command structures, exploit weaknesses we didn't know we had, and fight with a determination that borders on fanaticism. The Zarathi thought they understood warfare until they encountered human methods." Meanwhile, on distant Earth, President Elena Rodriguez was addressing the Global Assembly about humanity's expanding role in galactic affairs. The woman who had authorized the original mining expedition now found herself leading a species that had become a major galactic power almost overnight. 6 months ago, we were denied basic mining rights by civilizations that considered us too primitive to survive first contact with real danger," President Rodriguez announced to the assembled delegates. Today, those same civilizations are requesting permission to trade with us, offering technological exchanges that would have been unthinkable before we proved ourselves capable of fighting our own battles. The transformation was remarkable. Alien ambassadors who had once dismissed human requests were now competing to offer favorable trade agreements. Technologies that the Council had withheld as too dangerous for primitive species were being offered freely in exchange for human protection or territorial agreements. But we must remember, Rodriguez continued, that our position in galactic affairs remains precarious. We've proven we can fight, but we haven't yet proven we can build lasting peace. The galaxy is watching to see whether humanity will become another aggressive empire or whether we can chart a different course. The question was being debated not just in human government chambers, but throughout galactic space. Humanity's military success had been undeniable, but their long-term intentions remained unclear. Were they conquering heroes who had freed the galaxy from its most dangerous predators, or were they simply the next threat that would need to be contained? The answer came in an unexpected form. A joint human Zarathi announcement that shocked every intelligence service in the galaxy. Captain Webb, speaking from the bridge of his flagship, appeared alongside Hive Mistress Velkira in what was clearly a formal diplomatic ceremony. Today marks the beginning of a new relationship between humanity and the Zarathi Hives, Webb announced. After extensive negotiations, we have reached an agreement that ensures the survival of both species while establishing clear boundaries for future interactions. The terms were revolutionary by galactic standards. Instead of driving the Zarathi to extinction, humanity had negotiated their relocation to resource-rich systems beyond the galactic rim. In exchange, the Zarathi would provide biotechnological expertise and serve as allies in humanity's expansion into unexplored regions of space. The Hives acknowledge human supremacy in contested territories, Hive Mistress Velkira added, her translated words carrying harmonics that xenobiologists recognized as formal submission. In return, humanity guarantees the survival and autonomy of Zarathi civilization in designated regions. This arrangement serves the interests of both species. The announcement sent shockwaves throughout the galactic community. Humanity had not only defeated the galaxy's greatest predators, but had turned them into allies. The implications for galactic power structures were staggering. High Counselor Vexitar found himself facing a reality that challenged every assumption about interspecies relations. "They've accomplished in months what we couldn't achieve in millions of years," he admitted to his senior advisors. "Not only have they neutralized the Zarathi threat, but they've converted it into a strategic advantage." The final lesson of humanity's rise was becoming clear to every intelligence service in the galaxy. The species that the Council had dismissed as too primitive to survive had proven themselves capable of rewriting the fundamental rules of galactic civilization. They hadn't just demanded a seat at the table. They had built their own table and were now deciding who else deserved to sit at it. As human fleets continued their expansion into formerly unexplored regions, protected by their new Zarathi allies and fueled by resources that made their economy the fastest growing in galactic space, one thing became undeniably clear: the galaxy would never be the same. The species that had dismissed humanity's cautions and ignored their warnings now found themselves being pursued with merciless efficiency by beings who had learned that the only way to ensure survival in a hostile galaxy was to become the most dangerous predator in it. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was just getting started.